You done now?
Can you imagine having the job of having to write for the President of the United States? Well, then make that the President of the United States. His name is Barack Obama, one of the great orators in presidential history. Cody Keenan had to do that throughout the entirety of the Obama administration. And now he has written a new book called Grace, President Obama in 10 Days in the Battle for America, encapsulating 10 of the most important days throughout his time with the Obama administration. Cody talks to us about working with the president, the amusing stories that he's had with him, the pressure of having to write for some of those memorable moments from the Obama White House, especially within that 10-day period. It was a really fascinating conversation to talk to somebody who put literally the words on the page for the most powerful person in the world to read. He is Cody Keenan, and he joins us this time on The Collection. And he joins me right now to talk about the new book, Grace, President Obama in 10 Days in the Battle for America. He joins us this morning, Cody Keenan. Cody, it's a pleasure to talk to you.
Brad, good morning, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. Let's talk about the book. I mean, this is a very interesting book and an inside look to the Obama presidency, especially during a very important time. For people listening who may not know, describe these 10 days, because this is what the book is about. It's about 10 particular days in the Obama White House. Talk to them about what those 10 days are.
It was a 10-day stretch in June of 2015 where basically events that were big enough to cover entire years were all collapsed into one little stretch. There was the white supremacist massacre in a Charleston church. The Confederate flag started coming down over public spaces in the South. Supreme Court cases on healthcare and marriage equality, and Obama singing Amazing Grace down in Charleston's eulogy. And all those events in 10 days was a lot to handle, but they also all spoke to fundamental questions about who we are as Americans and what we believe in, whether or not we believe in equality.
And within those 10 days, how many public addresses or speeches on television did the president have to deliver?
He delivered 10, but we probably wrote 20 because my team and I had to prepare for any eventuality in the Supreme Court cases. You know, we know the Supreme Court rules at 10 in the morning, but we don't know how or which day. So, there's a very real chance the Supreme Court could have decided, no, we're going to strike down Obamacare and kick tens of millions of people off their health insurance and remove benefits and protections for everybody else. Or the Supreme Court could have also said, no, we're not going to find a right to marriage equality, and millions of Americans are just going to be second-class citizens in the sense that they can't get married to the person they love. So we had to write speeches for every outcome while we were grappling with the eulogy and just the day-to-day speeches of the job.
I want to get to the eulogy here in a moment, but I kind of want to go backward for you in your career, writing for President Obama, whom, whatever you think of him politically, you have to acknowledge the fact that he's probably one of the best speakers in presidential history, one of the greatest orators of all time, a very eloquent individual when he gets up in front of the people. Writing a speech for him has to be very pressure-filled, I'm sure, because there's a lot of pinnacles that you want to hit of his excellence when he gets up there. So the first time you wrote a speech for the president of the United States, can you take me back to that and what was going on through your mind when he was sitting there reading through it, or when you got the call that he had just read through it?
Yeah, it's a challenge. I mean, this is someone who has described himself as a better speechwriter than his speechwriters. After a speech, he went and said, "I'm LeBron, baby." He knows he's good at it, which made our job difficult. The first time I had to do it too, I was terrified. It was early 2007, and he was speaking. I was slated to write his opening remarks for the NAACP candidates debate. There were still 9 Democrats in the field at that point, I think. So it was short. You want to get all the right messages into a short speech that a lot of people are watching, and that would happen to be on cable. So I was just sitting in campaign headquarters in Chicago watching it. I was like, oh my God, he actually read something that I wrote. That's awesome.
Yeah, I can only imagine. But I also is it like when you turn in a speech for the president of the United States, he's going to deliver this to not only everybody in the United States, but people worldwide are going to listen to every word that he says just because of the position of power that he's in. When you turn, though, the speech in or the draft in, Do you almost feel like the student turning it into the teacher and watching the teacher read through it with the red pen? Is that the feeling that you get?
It is a lot like that because he'll mark up every speech. He really gets into it. I mean, it's a collaborative exercise. That's the way he always viewed it. He didn't need us to give him something perfect. He needed us to give him something he could work with. And he really would get out he used a black pen, but he would just mark the heck out of speeches. And often, he'd sit us down and walk us through it. I mean, this is the most powerful man in the world who would still take 15 minutes to explain his writing to his speechwriters. And it's something we really appreciated.
I heard you talk about writing the State of the Union address and how you thought that you had knocked it out of the park. It was a 10 out of 10, and you were waiting for a call from the Obama White House, from the office, to kind of hear the feedback from the President of the United States. And you thought that he said, "You could knock this one out of the park. This is the greatest thing you've ever done, Cody. Now I know why you've been with me all these years." But that wasn't his exact reaction. It was, right?
Well, yeah, I was ready for my gold star. It was close. He said, this is the best shape we've ever been in a week out, but we still have a week, so let's make it better. And he did something interesting with that one, which is 2015. He said, the entire speech is up at a 10, and I need parts of it down at 4, 5, 6. And he asked me if I ever listened to Miles Davis, and I said, no, not really. And he said, well, the thing about Miles Davis is it's the silences. It's the space between the notes. It's the notes you don't play. Because they say something too. And I started picking up what he's putting down. So he said, I want you to go home tonight and don't do any work. Pour a drink, listen to Miles Davis, and come back here tomorrow. Find me some silences. Put some silences in the speech. Put some spaces between these stops. And make it sing a little bit. Because the speech can have a lyrical quality to it. It's a performance in addition to the written word. And that's something he was always really good at.
Oh yeah, I mean, even when he would do the White House correspondence dinners, his delivery was almost comedian-esque. He had the timing down, and a lot of times people think about when they hear about a speech, they think about, like you said, the written word, but really so much of the nonverbal, the rate, the tone, the volume, the pitch, the gesturing can add so much to a speech, which the president was very great at. You've gotten to work with him for such a long time. When you talked to him about this book, about grace and the 10 days that you're focusing on in this White House, what was his reaction to the book?
His first reaction was that he hasn't gotten there yet in his memoir. So he's like, don't take all my good stories, brother. But he was also, he said, this is a story worth telling. And part of the book, while it focuses on those 10 days, there's a lot of White House stories in there too, and the struggle to write for him, and the struggle to do good work, even when you have a good team around you. You mentioned about him writing up speeches. The Charleston eulogy, which is kind of the dramatic backbone of this book, how that speech came together. And he at first didn't want to speak at all. He finally agreed to give a eulogy about 5 days after the shooting, so with 4 days to go. And I did my best, and sometimes we just couldn't reach where he needed it to be. And the night before the speech, he called me into the residence around 11 p.m. and he had just crossed out the last 2 pages of the speech, which he had never done before, just one big line right through it. And he'd rewritten them by hand in just 3 hours, whereas I had been working on it for 3 days. But he was just a really good boss. He could have just excised me from the equation or told me I screwed up, but instead he walked me through it. And I apologized to him for the first time ever. I'd never done that before. He said, look, brother, we're collaborators. You gave me what I needed to get my best work done here. And when you've been thinking about these issues for 40 years, you'll know what you want to say too.
Yeah, then in the speech, when the president started to sing "Amazing Grace," it's one of those moments that you kind of remember and it's etched in your memory forever. I wanted to ask you a couple last things as a speechwriter, because I just find this fascinating. I graduated from university with a degree in communication studies with an emphasis in rhetorical communications. I'm working on my master's right now. But when you go to outline a speech, when you sit down and the page is blank, what's the first thing that you go to? You talk about Miles Davis and musicians. Sometimes it's finding that first note that's going to set you up for the rest of the song. What is your strategy, or what is your method when you sit down in front of that blank page?
Yeah, I'm actually on campus today at Northwestern University. I teach speechwriting, and we're about to we always do is ask ourselves, what's the story we're trying to tell? Because the speech needs to tell a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it should fit into a larger story you're trying to tell over the arc of your political career. And then I just start writing as fast as I can. I will actually just try to bang out the entire speech in just a few minutes. And that means it can be really, really simple. The language can be simple. The sentences can be simple, but then you've got something on paper. You've got something to work with. And any really good speech is 10% writing, 90% rewriting. You spend most of your time revising, polishing, making it better, coming up with new ideas. But that blank page can be daunting. So I just write as quickly as I can just to get something down.
Well, one final question for you, Cody, before we let you go. I know you have a lot to do this morning. Really appreciate your time. We saw you put words to the President Obama's biggest moments, like we talked about the eulogy or the massacre in Charleston, so on and so forth. But I'm sure between those moments, the president and you shared some very personal moments, some moments of bonding. And from all accounts, he was a very amusing individual when you would catch him in small talk. Do you have a funny or amusing anecdote that you had with the President of the United States?
Oh, God, there's so many. I mean, when you're working that closely for 14 years, it's just hard not to. You know, he was good enough to have my wife and I and our families and our wedding parties at the White House on our wedding day, which will show you just what kind of boss he is. But God, funny ones. You know, he was slated to give a speech on the 50th anniversary of the "I Have a Dream" speech from the Lincoln Memorial steps, and that's just setting you up to fail. It's not going to be better. There's just nothing you can do that's going to top the "I Have a Dream" speech. And he wasn't really looking forward to it. And he said, look, we were sitting in the Oval Office. He said, look, I don't want to do this. I'd rather be hanging out with my girls or playing golf or drinking a martini. And I said, and they'd say, you're not American. And that's one of the rare times I got a genuine laugh out of him. Sure, we shared tons. You know, he's a big sports fan, so we spend Mondays, recapping the Bears game. But he's just a great boss.
Oh, it's incredible. It's incredible. I can't wait to read the whole book, and I encourage everyone to do it. Cody Keenan, Grace, President Obama in 10 Days in the Battle for America. Cody, thanks so much for joining us, and good luck with your class later on today.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.